Kindred, the eternal hunters. Separate but never parted, Kindred represents the twin essences of death. Lamb's bow offers a swift release from the mortal realm for those who accept their fate. Wolf hunts down those who run from their end, delivering the violent finality with his crushing jaws. Though interpretations of Kindred's nature vary across Runeterra, every mortal must choose the true face of their death. Kindred is the white embrace of nothingness, and the gnashing of teeth in the dark, shepherd and the butcher, poet and the primitive. They are one and both. When caught on the edge of life, louder than any trumpeting horn, it is the hammering pulse at one's throat that calls Kindred to the hunt. Stand and greet Lamb's silvered bow, and her arrows will lay you down swiftly. If you refuse her, Wolf will join you for his merry hunt, where every chase runs to its brutal end. For as long as its people have known death, Kindred has stalked Valoran. When the final moment comes, it is said a true Demacian will turn to Lamb, taking the arrow, while, through the shadowed streets of Noxus, Wolf leads the hunt. In the snows of the Freylord, before going off to a fight, some warbands kiss the wolf, vowing to honor his chase with the blood of their enemies. After each harrowing, the town of Bridgewater gathers to celebrate its survivors and honor those who granted a true death by Lamb. Short story: Forest for the Trees. The battle spilled over like a feast before them. Such delicious life, so many to end, so many to hunt. Wolf paced in the snow, while Lamb danced lithely from sword edge to spear tip, the red-blooded butcher never staining her pale coat. There is courage in pain here, Wolf. Many will gladly meet their end. She drew her bow and let loose an arc of swift finality. The last breath of a soldier came with a ragged consent as his shield gave way to a heavy axe. Stuck in his heart was a single white arrow, shimmering with ethereal brilliance. Courage bores me, the great black wolf grumbled as he tracked through the snow. I am hungry and eager to chase. Patience, she murmured in his shaggy ear. As soon as the words left her, Wolf's shoulders tensed and his body dropped low to the ground. I smell fear, he said, trembling with excitement. Across the muddied field of snow, a squire, too young for battle, but with a blade in his hand nonetheless, saw that Kindred had marked all in the valley. I want that tender thing. Does it see us, Lamb? Yes, but it must choose. Feed the wolf, or embrace me. The battle turned its steel towards the squire. He now stared at the rolling tide of bravery and desperation coming for him. This would be his last dawn. In that instant, the boy made his choice. He would not go willingly until his last breath. He would run. Wolf snapped in the air, and he rolled his face in the snow like a new pup. Yes, dear wolf, Lamb's voice echoed like a string of pearly bells. Begin your hunt. With that, Wolf bounded across the field after the youth, a howl thundering through the valley. His shadowed body swept over the remains of newly dead and their useless shattered weapons. The squire turned and ran for the woods until the thick black trunks passed in blur. He pressed on, the frozen air burning his lungs. He looked once more for his hunter, but could see nothing but the darkened trees. The shadows closed tightly around him, and he suddenly realized there was no escape. It was the black body of Wolf that was everywhere, all at once. The chase was at its end. Wolf buried his sharp teeth into the squire's neck, tearing out ribbons of vibrant life. Wolf reveled in the boy's scream and crunching bones. Lamb, who had trailed behind laughing to see such sport, Wolf turned and asked in a voice more growl than speech, Is this music, Lamb? It is to you, she answered. Again, Wolf licked the last drop of the youth's life from his canine jaws. I want to chase again, little lamb. There are always more, she whispered. Until the day, there is only Kindred. And then, will you run from me? Lamb turned back to battle. I would never run from you, dear wolf. A short story. A Good Death by Matt Dunn. Magga was about to die for the 14th time. She had bitten into a rotten apple yet again. Its putrid flesh had, as always, infected her with Cairnshade. The actress went through the motions of stumbling to her death while shouting her final words for all to hear. Oh, but how wondrous a dream is life! Only now is too late. Do I wake to see its myriad of splendors, she bemoaned. With a puff of smoke and glittering powder, Kindred made a grand entrance upon the stage. As per tradition, they were played by one actor, his head covered by two opposing masks. He approached Magga, the white mask of the lamb facing her. Hark! Do I hear a plea for my keenest arrow? Come, child, let the warmth of your heart fade into the cold embrace of oblivion. Magga refused, as she had 13 times before. Any nuance in her performance was buried beneath the ear-splitting delivery of her scream. On cue, Lamb spun around, revealing the second mask, that of the wolf. There is naught ye can do to stave off thine end, growled Wolf. I am but a poor young maiden. Please, let my piteous cry fall on all four of thine ears. The audience seemed enraptured by the unfolding dramatics of the Orpheum Mechanicals. With the twin threats of plague and war on the tongues of those in the neighboring protectorates, death dramas were all the rage. Denji, the actor portraying both the lamb and the wolf, descended the young actress, awkwardly bearing wooden fangs. Magga offered her neck. At the threat of the wolf's bite, she triggered the device sewn into her blouse's collar. Ribbons of red fabric unspooled, to the delight of pips and yelps of the audience. They had gotten what they paid for. By the time the mechanicals had staggered back to their wagon and set off into the direction of Needlebrook, there were no stars to be seen. Instead, a veil of clouds stretched across the night sky. Needlebrook always delivered a good audience. Illusion, the company's owner and sole dramaturg, explained once more. He staggered around, drunk on his own accolades, as well as the wine Parr had gifted from the locals. The night wore on, and the troupe had descended into bickering. Tria and Denji lambasted their playwright over the quality of his plots, which fell into the predictable structure: strategy strikes maiden, death finds maiden, death takes maiden. Illusion argued that complicated plots detracted from a good death scene. Magga, the youngest of the bunch, agreed with Tria and Denji's diagnosis, but she kept her mouth shut. Had she not stowed away in the wandering troop's wagon, she would certainly be somewhere far more miserable. Lucky for her, the mechanicals had recently lost several actors due to Illusion's insistence on complete artistic control. Because of his attitude and obvious mediocrity, they were facing a drought of fresh faces. And so, the Orpheum Mechanicals agreed to contract Magga to die in all their dramatics for the foreseeable future, for which she had been grateful. Illusion was still smarting from Denji and Tria's words when he motions to Parr, their wagoner, to stop and make camp. The elaborated Achur set out on his bedroll in pride of a place next to the wagon. He then threw the rest of the bedding into the long grass nearby. Ungrateful players can sleep in the wilds, Illusion spat, where they shall hopefully find their manners. The rest of the troupe built a fire and swapped stories. Denji and Tria had fallen asleep in each other's arms while whispering potential names for their unborn child into each other's ears. They had nattered on all day about traveling company, would stop in Jadedel, a town so perfect and peaceful they would set aside their vagabond ways to raise their child. Maga moved closer to the crackling fire, so its pops and whistles would drown out the irksome affections of her traveling companions. But sleep never came. Instead, Maga tossed and turned, thinking about the looks on the audience's face as the coiled spurts of blood unfurled from her neckline. A pretty maiden struck dead by her own naivety was all the theatrical pomp illusion could muster. But the crowd lusted after the gruesome facade. Eventually, she left her bedroll and set out into the woods to soothe her unsettled mind. In the dead of night, Maga came across a low, grassy mound with slabs standing at the stone at the base. Although she could not read the inscriptions, her fingers traced the familiar etching of Kindred's twin masts. This was a place of the dead, a burial site built long ago. She felt a chill on her back that compelled her to look up. She was not alone. Maga immediately understood what she saw. She'd encountered a crude impersonation of them night after night, but poor Denji couldn't begin to instill the dread washing over Maga. Before her, perched on the weathering barrel archway, was Lamb herself, flanked by her ever-faithful counterpart, Wolf. "I hear a beating heart," said Wolf, his black eyes twinkling with delight. "May I have it?" "Perhaps," replied Lamb. "I sense she is afraid." "Speak, little one. Tell us your name." I would have yours first," stammered Maga, stepping backward. Her slow escape was halted by the speedy Wolf, who materialized unsettlingly close behind her. He spoke directly in her ear. "We have many names. In the west, I am Ina to his Ani," said Lamb. "In the east, Farya to his Woyal. But we are kindred everywhere. I am always Lamb to his Wolf, and he is always Wolf to my Lamb." Wolf reared up and sniffed the air. "She is playing a boring game," said Wolf. "Let us play a new game, one of chasing and running and biting." "She is not playing, dear Wolf," said Lamb. "She is frightened, and had lost her own name. It hides behind her lips, afraid to come out. Worry not, dear child, I have found your name. We know it as you know us, Maga." Please," Maga stammered. "Tonight is not a very good night for—" Wolf's great pink tongue lolling from the side of his mouth as he proceeded to cackle. "All nights are good for pouncing," said Wolf, laughing. "All days are too," Lamb said. "With light comes a clear shot." There's no moon tonight," cried Maga. She used what illusion had taught her to gesture grand, so those in the back could see her movements. "It is hidden by a blanket of clouds, tucked away from my eyes and yours. Without the moon, what would be the last thing I would see?" "We see the moon," replied Lamb, as she caressed her fabled bow. "It is always there." "There are no stars," said Maga, trying again, this time gesturing smaller and speaking quieter. "No menagerie of twinkling diamonds, glittering in the midnight hue. What more beautiful view could anyone hope for once one meets Lamb and Wolf?" "This Maga thing is playing a new game," growled Wolf. "It is called stalling." Wolf stopped, moving, and cocked his head from one side. He turned sideways, snout towards Maga before speaking. "Can we play chasing the Maga thing and bite her to bits?" Wolf cackled, his fangs together loudly for effect. "Let us ask her," said Lamb. "Maga, do you prefer Wolf's chase or my arrow?" Maga was trembling now. Her eyes raced to take in every last detail of the world around her. It wasn't such a bad place to depart. There was grass, there was trees, there was the ancient archway, which was stillness to the air. "I would prefer Lamb's arrow," she said, looking at the rough crusts of bark on the trees. "I'll imagine myself climbing to the highest boughs, like when I was a child. Only this time, I'll never stop climbing." "Is this what it is like to go with you?" "No," said Lamb, "though it is a nice thought. Fear not, little maiden, we are just having our fun. You have come to us tonight. We have not come for you." "I cannot chase the Maga thing," said Wolf, with a hint of disappointment in his voice. "But there are other things nearby, other things ripe for the chasing and the biting. Hurry, Lamb. I am hungry." "For now, know that your theatrics have pleased us, and we will watch them until the day we meet again." Wolf passed over Maga and disappeared in the woods. The shadowy beast stalked over the fields of grass. Maga looked back towards the weathered barrel. Lamb was gone. The actress fled. When Maga returned to the encampment, she found it in utter ruin. The wagon she had just begun to call home had been ransacked, reduced to a smoldering husk. Bits of clothing and ruined props laid strewn across the campsite. She found Denji's body near where he'd slept. He had died protecting Tria, whose corpse lay behind him. Judging from the trails of blood, their deaths had not been slow. They were dragged themselves towards each other, their fingers entwined in one's last caress before death. Maga noticed the Illusian had managed to kill 2 of the bandits before being burnt to a crisp, along with Par in the wagon. The only thing that remained untouched were Denji's lamb and wolf masks. Maga picked them up and held them in her hands. She placed the lamb mask over her own and heard the voice of Wolf. "Chase the Maga thing." The maiden ran to the distance to Needlebrook, never looking back. The golden round was filled to the brim with a sea of twinkling eyes, all glittering in excitement as the velvet curtain. The king sat in the theater, with the queen and their advisors, all eagerly awaiting the onset of the dramatics. Everyone hushed as the black curtain lifted to reveal the actors. Maga sat in a quiet dressing room under the stage. She heard the crowd fall silent as she studied herself in the mirror. The luster of youth had faded from her eyes years ago, and left her with a long shock of silver running through her hair. "Madame," said the stagehand, "you're not in costume yet." "No, child," Maga said. "I only dress at the last moment." "It is the last moment," said the young stagehand, holding the 2 final pieces of Maga's costume, the same lamb and wolf masks from her days with the Orphelia Mechanicals. "May your performance be blessed tonight," the stagehand said. Maga prepared to leave the stage. She slipped the masks over her head. The old chill from the dark barrel crept down her spine. She welcomed it, as always. She enthralled the audience as she glided onto stage. Embodying Lamb's graceful movements, she thrilled the crowd by her rendition of Wolf's playful savagery. She, as the twin deaths personified, eased the suffering of her fellow actors, or ripped it from their throats, until the crowd stood at its feet and erupted into a thunderous applause. It was true. All audience loved a good death, and they loved Maga's more than any other. Even the king and the queen were on their feet in praise of her work. But Maga heard no applause, and she saw no ovation. She didn't feel the stage beneath her feet, nor the hands of her fellow murmurers in hers as they bowed low. All she felt was a sharp pain in her chest. When Maga looked out over the audience, every single face was either a lamb or a wolf.